across the south, but that will be gradually replaced by some cloud and eventually some outbreaks of rain. So I think come the afternoon, the best of the sunshine will be northern England northwards. There will be a few showers around, especially for the Northern Isles of Scotland. And temperatures tomorrow generally ranging between 5 to 7 in the north, potentially up to 11 degrees across the south. And then on to Tuesday, a wet day for a lot of the UK, a band of rain, potentially some hill snow for Scotland, and then some very wet weather for southern areas of the UK. Could also turn quite windy too. Temperatures on the face of it in the south into double figures, but factor in that rain and wind, it's not going to feel too great. And unfortunately, the unsettled weather continues into Wednesday and into Thursday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The Queen of Denmark has shocked the nation, announcing in her New Year's message that she'll vacate the throne. Queen Margaret II has reigned for more than half a century. She made the announcement on live television moments ago. She's due to step down on the 14th of January, exactly 52 years after she took the throne in 1972. She'll be succeeded by her son, Crown Prince Frederik. Rishi Sunak struck an optimistic tone in his New Year message, promising a brighter future with tax cuts and a reduction in national insurance. He described 2023 as a momentous year, which saw inflation halved and record investment in NHS. That's despite junior doctors in England planning their longest walkout in NHS history next month. The Prime Minister says his New Year's resolution is to keep driving forward.
Inflation is set to fall further, cutting the cost of living for everyone. And we're not stopping there. We're going further to grow our economy by reducing debt, cutting taxes and rewarding hard work, building secure supplies of energy here at home, backing British business and delivering world-class education.
Meanwhile, the Labour leader says the power to shape the future of Britain rests in everyone's hands. Sir Keir Starmer's message offered a preview of his party's election campaign, saying 2024 needs to give Britain its future back.
In the Labour Party, we've been building to this for 4 years. We're confident we have a plan that can move our country forward, end the cost of living crisis, take back our streets, get the NHS back on its feet, cheaper energy bills for your home, more opportunities for your children.
The family of a mother and her son who were killed in an avalanche in the French Alps say they're beyond heartbroken. Kate Vokes, who was 54, died when an avalanche swept through an off-piste ski slope on Mont Blanc on Thursday. Her 22-year-old son Archie was also killed. He had achieved his Level 1 ski instructor qualification just a year earlier. Their family asked for privacy, saying the tragic accident had left a hole in their lives. Britain's New Year celebrations are still a few hours away, but the party's already started in other parts of the world. Happy New Year to India, Hong Kong, as well as Japan, Taiwan, Thailand and Australia. Hong Kong celebrated with a huge fireworks display over Victoria Harbour in front of hundreds of thousands of people. In Australia, the famous Harbour Bridge and Sydney Opera House were alight with colours and sparkle. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News.
USA boxing allows for transgender women to compete against female boxers, and Venice issues a cap on the number of tourists allowed to its city. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics. Tonight is a bit different because we do not have an audience because it's New Year's Eve. And who would come out on New Year's Eve? But coming up on the show tonight, I sat down with family law barrister Sarah Phillimore to discuss the Russell Brand controversy. We're going to see a clip of that interview. Also, John Cleese gives us an insight into his life and career outside of GB News. David Oldroyd-Bolt gives us a look back on the year in culture and the arts. And of course, me and my fantastic panel will still be answering questions. Even though we don't have a studio audience, we do have questions coming in, fingers crossed. All that and much, much more tonight on Free Speech Nation with my wonderful studio guests, Cressida Wetton and Jonathan Cogan. Feels odd, doesn't it, to be in the room without the crowd?
It does, I miss them.
Do you?
Yes.
Yeah, what about you,
I was
John?
working up some crowd work finally tonight, and now I don't have...
Now we can't use it, now we can't do it. No. But you do have your New Year's Eve Prosecco.
I've got a bottle of 2002. Prosecco.
I doubt it's 2002.
22, sorry.
22, exactly. Yeah. I don't think we'd splash out on vintage, if I'm absolutely honest.
Flavoured drinking wine.
Why don't you crack that baby open?
Let's do it. It's New Year's Eve.
It's New Year's Eve.
Absolutely.
I've got my...
You got your...
I've got my Bucks Fizz, and
very nice.
Cressida's not drinking because she gets violent.
She does.
Now, we have got some topics to chat about while Jonathan is attempting to open that in a really inept way.
I just had a manicure.
OK, we're going to start with this story. This is about USA boxing, which is allowing transgender women to compete against female boxers in 2024. And their new policy means that...
my eye.
Oh,
it's all good. Carry on.
Are you OK?
Yeah, I'm fine.
The cork went in your eye?
Yeah, it's all right. I've had worse from Cressida. All right.
Absolutely. Let me get back to the story. So boxers who identify as trans will be allowed to fight in the category of their choice. However, they must meet a certain criteria, which includes completing gender reassignment surgery, regular hormone testing, and declaring a new identity. So, should men who identify as women be allowed to compete against biological women? That is really the question. And Cressida, you're probably the best place to answer this because you're a boxer.
I'm not a boxer.
You're a woman.
That does explain the drinking, as you said earlier. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Thank you, Jonathan.
No worries.
You'll regret this later.
I will do.
It's mad, isn't it? Because these people have been through a male puberty.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, it can go both ways. There are women who want to become men who can box. I'm less concerned about them.
Well, there's less chance of broken skulls.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. There was that... who was the fighter? Fallon Fox?
Yes, and was that MMA, UFC? Was it?
Yeah, well, anyway, a guy who identifies as female boasting about fracturing women's skulls online. You know, that's the kind of thing we're dealing with.
Just from a physical standpoint, it really does seem to be an unfair advantage to, you know...
I mean, it's stating the obvious, isn't it? But particularly, you know, we've had these discussions about various sports, and, you know, there might be a case with, say, equestrian sports, where the horse does all the work, or, you know, the car things, what are they called, racing games.
I heard in chess there was some issue with transgender players, male to female, joining women's only tournaments, and there was some controversy there.
Really?
Yeah, not even a bit, as in I
feel like there's a punchline coming.
No,
yeah, so do I. Are the
Yeah.
pieces particularly heavy?
Something about Queen, I don't know.
I mean, but that doesn't make sense. That's what I mean, is that if you're talking about, let's say,
but
chess...
there was still controversy there.
But why? Chess, backgammon, darts, horse racing, car racing, those things you can understand why segregating by sex wouldn't really make a difference. But I think segregating by sex for boxing in particular, where people are kicking the hell out of each other.
Absolutely. I mean, people are segregated in boxing anyway, aren't they? Featherweight, so on. Heavyweights is that one?
Heavyweight, lightweight.
And if you start with bigger, broader shoulders and a larger fist, it just doesn't make sense. So it's going to be the end of women's sport. And I don't know if any women have dropped out yet, but...
I was talking to Sharon Davis about this the other day, yesterday, in fact. And it's very interesting because what I asked her was, you know, this is something that no one I know thinks this is sensible. You know, we're talking about 99.999% of the country recognise that we segregate sports for a reason by sex, and that's the fair way to do it. It's only a tiny minority of activists who think that there is any kind of credence to this idea. And yet, Jonathan, those activists appear to be dominating all of the major sporting bodies.
Do you think that's through fear of repercussion, or do you think there's a deliberate attempt to kind of march through these institutions and dismantle them?
I'm genuinely baffled by it. I'm genuinely baffled.
Did you see the South Park parody of this when they had was it Ric Flair, or no? It was a big burly wrestler, a different wrestler, competing in the strong woman competition and just beating the lights out of everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a few years ago now.
Yeah.
And it's actually come true. I mean, that's, you know, it's scary stuff. OK. Well, let's move on to the next story. So on this year's New Year's honours list is Amanda Blanc. This is the boss of Aviva. She was recognised for her services to business, gender equality and net zero, even though she insists on personally approving all senior white male recruits. She has actually received a damehood now. So, Cressida, what do you think about this? I like that she's called Amanda Blanc. I think that's funny.
Great.
I think it's deliberate.
I think when I go to use Aviva, I'm going to make sure that I get a white man to serve me, because we know he's been through a more rigorous recruitment process than everybody else.
Yeah. So should she have had the damehood?
I don't think she should. No, I think this is a bad move on her part.
Yeah, OK. What do you make of this, Jonathan? Because these peerages and these honours, you know, it seems to be a bit of cronyism going on a lot of the time, doesn't it?
I wonder whether this was sort of in the works before this controversy came out, because if not, she's timed it brilliantly. She's like, I'm going to be completely incendiary to a large portion of the population and then get a damehood.
Yeah, but she doesn't think she's being incendiary. She thinks what she's doing is... No, she thinks she's pushing for equality.
Absolutely, and this is what always happens. At the level of the organisation, they proudly tell you about their prejudices and the fact that they're going to discriminate. And then when it gets down to the individual level, they say, oh, everybody's here on merit, but it can't be both, can it?
Why don't they just go back to merit? Why don't you just hire the best people for the job? And what you'll find is that you get diversity quite naturally, I would have thought.
Great idea.
Yeah. I'm a genius. No, I've totally solved it.
Don't be racist. Oh.
Yeah, it's not... Well, that's the other thing. If she's saying that all of the people who are employing people within her company need to run it by her first so she can check, she presumably thinks that she has a bunch of racists working at Aviva.
That's true. Well,
I mean, that's the implication.
It'd be funny if she was like, yeah, white man, get him in. Maybe that was a...
Maybe that's what she meant.
Yeah.
She wants more white men. Maybe that's what it is. OK. Right now, if you were planning a big group trip to Italy next year, you may have to check your group size because Venice is limiting the amount of tourists to its city. It's capping the groups to 25 people per group. That's the cap, and this apparently is to ease the pressure of mass tourism. And earlier this year, the number of beds for tourists surpassed the number of Venetians living there. So, it's a popular city, Jonathan. It's I've actually never been to Venice.
Oh, I've been.
Have you?
I've been twice, actually.
Yeah, but you've been everywhere.
I've been everywhere, man.
Yeah, you're a globetrotter. But what do you make of this? I mean,
well, one similarity between Venice and Disney is that you get very sick if you drink the water there. I've done both.
Is that right?
Yeah, do not drink the water in It's a Small World. I got super duper gonorrhea, and it took me a long time to get out of it.
You got gonorrhea?
Super duper gonorrhea, yes.
Oh, blimey.
Yeah,
I hope Disney apologised for that.
Well, they've got their own problems at the moment.
They do, absolutely they do, yes.
But what do I think? Do they think they should limit groups? I mean, if it is the only way to save the integrity of the tourist industry within the city, then I guess so. I mean, I don't know 25 people. Who's travelling to
Big
Venice?
group,
yeah,
isn't it?
it is a big group.
Picturing a massive stag do or a whole rugby team or something.
Who has that many friends?
Well, I don't know. And presumably, can you have 100 smaller groups? I don't know how the rules
Yeah,
work.
do they know if it's like COVID? You say, like, oh, these aren't my friends, I just happen to be in the pub next to them. Yeah.
But it does kind of make sense insofar as, to give you an analogy, if I go to an art gallery and they've let too many people in and you can't see the paintings, that does annoy me. And I sort of think, like, the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, they do have a limit. And when you go in there, it's always quite quiet because
nice.
which is what you need to, whereas when I went to the Louvre, and if you try and look at the Mona Lisa in the Louvre, forget about it. I mean, you are swamped. And mostly it's people holding their phones up to get a photo of the Mona Lisa. It's right there, you can see it. You're looking at it, you don't need to take a picture of it.
And it's so rude to the photographers, isn't it? As if you think you can compete with all the pictures on the internet.
Yeah, just buy a postcard in the gift shop, because I can guarantee that'll be a better picture than the one you take on your Samsung.
Maybe the people that do go to Venice now are going to become they're going to have bigger budgets. Maybe it's going to become more exclusive.
Can you get 25 on a gondola?
Six, I think.
Is that what it is?
We did a gondola, and my mum wasn't sure whether to do it or not because it was quite expensive.
Yes.
And we ended up doing it on the last night. And all she said the whole time around was, it's so magical. But she said that about 28 times, and by the end of it, it really lost its sort of...
Yeah, it got annoying.
Yeah.
Does a gondola have a cox?
Pardon me?
You know, the one sitting at the end shouting stroke.
No, because there's only one. They don't need to be in time with each
stroke
other.
your cock. Sorry?
The cox in the boat.
No, and he helps the one with the big pole.
The one with the big... There's a lot of double entendre going on here, so I think we should definitely move on at this point. Now, 175,000 people have been asked to take part in a poll about why the royal family exists. It's quite an interesting poll to commission. This was actually commissioned by the government, asking random households for their opinion on the royals, and the participants will receive a £10 gift voucher as a thank you.
You get a picture of the Queen.
I don't know if it will have a picture of the Queen. That doesn't say, but the results being released this summer. I think it's an odd poll to put out there, but what do you think, Jonathan? Just on the basis of republicanism versus monarchism, do you believe that there should be a royal family?
It's a big question. I've changed my stance on this a few times over the years. I remember being like 18 and be like, it's completely ridiculous, why do we even have this? And then when you think about it, everything is ridiculous. Everything, I mean, not to get too faux, but everything is a bit constructed. So do I think it brings value? It's kind of funny. Gives the Express something to write about, what they do.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, do I think we need them? As long as they don't, you know, tell me what to do, and they're just up in their ivory towers and their ginger children. Just good luck to them.
I quite like the old-fashioned monarchy where they could off with their head. Yeah, the ones who could have you executed if you sort of...
I think we should get a mad king back.
A mad king?
Yeah, like a king...
Like George III?
George III.
Yeah, one of them.
Yeah.
Don't you think that would be a better system?
He died of super-duper gonorrhea, if I'm not mistaken.
Because is democracy working? Wouldn't a royal system...
Well, I don't know. I mean, I tend to fall back on economics because people say... you know, they bring in more wealth than they cost us. How do we know? How do we know? And I think, well, the people selling those plates with corgis on would be disappointed, wouldn't they, if the royal family were taken away?
That is true. And if you walk down the Mall and around there, there's all these gifts you can buy and street vendors and all sorts.
Who doesn't want some royal tat?
Yeah, that's true.
The tat industry relies on them.
It does.
But, you know, one of the best arguments I've heard against the monarchy is actually that it's quite cruel to the people in it. Insofar as these are people who have been born through no fault of their own into this circumstance where they have to be on duty all the time, they have to go around opening shopping centres, they're constantly in the public glare, they never have privacy, and that this argument really is that actually it's a form of abuse to sustain...
So what you're saying is Meghan Markle had a point?
Maybe she did have a point.
She chose to do it.
Yeah, no, that's different, yeah.
That's why Kate's so special, because she's didn't have to do it, and here she is smashing it.
Yeah, she is smashing it.
Why didn't Kate have to do it? As in, she just chose to marry...
Yeah,
yeah, but I would say, like,
Wills and Harry were born into
Yeah, exactly, but someone like Diana, someone like... well, actually, no, Diana did marry into it, but she was really, from an early age, sort of conditioned to be in that position. But someone like Charles, someone like Elizabeth... you know, these are the people... Is it actually abusive to expect someone to go through that? And look, we've just had the Danish Prime Minister... Danish Queen stepping down, and she's been doing that for decades.
Well, she's left it to her son, though, hasn't she? So it's, it's still...
Yeah, but she's clearly had enough.
Not King Ralph. Yes, she's had enough.
King Ralph, I haven't thought of that film for years.
Well, that's why they just got a pleb in to have a go.
Right, yeah, that's right, John Goodman.
Fancy having a go, Jonathan?
Have you seen King Ralph?
Yeah, no, but I like John Goodman.
Yeah, he's in it.
OK.
He becomes the King of England in King Ralph.
I like him
anyway,
in Lebowski. That's about the extent.
That's about it. OK, well, next on Free Speech Nation.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel. Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to this New Year's Eve Free Speech Nation. Now, earlier this year, the comedian Russell Brand found himself in hot water after Channel 4 released their investigation on him. Russell Brand had been posting videos on his platform Rumble, but then an MP sent a letter to the site raising concerns that he could profit from those videos. Now, this was a very interesting story, so I sat down with family law barrister and co-founder of the campaign group Fair Cop, Sarah Phillimore, and we discussed this. A lot of people have reacted very badly to this. The idea of a Conservative MP writing to Rumble and basically putting pressure on them to suggest that he ought to be demonetised. What did you make of that letter?
Well, I, along with a lot of other people, thought it was appalling. I thought it was state overreach and interference. I then went on to have some very interesting conversations with people on social media going, oh, don't be silly. An MP is not an agent of the state. This was
Really?
this was just, you know, it was just a casual inquiry, you know, having a little chat. And I said, look, it's on paper with the portcullis.
Yes.
It says from the UK Parliament. I mean, Rumble certainly thought it was a missive from the state.
Of course.
And it wasn't just Rumble, was it? It was YouTube, it was Facebook, it was GB News, it was everybody.
It went everywhere. Now, YouTube did actually demonetise Russell Brand. Now, this is a... Well, Rumble's point was that, you know, this is someone who hasn't been charged, hasn't gone through due process, there hasn't been a trial. So for them to assume guilt would be to bypass all of our fundamental values when it comes to legal process, right?
Again, some of the arguments I was having, no, she hasn't assumed guilt, don't be silly. Well, she used the word victims.
Right.
She talked about people being upset by inappropriate behaviour. I think the word allegation slipped in there somewhere. But no, I think you're absolutely right. This was an assumption of guilt. Therefore, a correct punishment is to remove his contact or demonetise it.
Yes.
And that... I am just flabbergasted that people think that that is acceptable, because what they're doing is focusing on an individual that they don't like. We can't speculate about the allegations, but of course, from what I've heard, it looks as though he has crossed a criminal line on a number of occasions. The question is, what do we do with that information? Is that actually going to be dealt with in a criminal court where it should be, or is it going to be dealt with in the court of Twitter?
Yes, well, we should emphasise that Russell Brand denies any criminality whatsoever. So ultimately, and he is as entitled to due process as everyone else, isn't he? I mean, this idea that just because he's a celebrity, we can all weigh in with our opinion. I mean, we haven't seen the evidence. We don't know.
It's something so ugly has been happening in the last couple of days on my timeline, certainly.
Yes.
Because it seems to be boiling down to the fact, well, he's rich, he can just sue for libel. Well, he's not going to be that rich if you've completely prevented him from earning a living. And there's, well, you know, you believe the victims. I've been called a rape apologist now countless times, saying Dispatches, oh, it was a wonderful investigation. Well, Dispatches has form. I mean, they did a previous documentary about the family justice system, something I know inside out, and that was not an impressive piece of journalism. But the bottom line remains, it's a one-sided investigation into the accounts of people with a particular narrative. I understand that Brand was given 8 days to respond to allegations that went back almost a decade. Now, that isn't fair, that isn't right. And for people to say, well, he's horrible, he's slimy, I don't like the way he looks. Well, think about Christopher Jeffries. He was basically called a murderer and a paedophile because he had odd hair.
Yeah.
It's just...
And was on the front cover of papers and all sorts of things.
It's just so frightening. It's not just that people are content for this to happen, they're actively cheerleading for it. And that's where I just begin to feel very, very frightened, because, OK, it's fine when it's somebody you don't like, but what happens if it's your brother, your husband, your father?
So... Are we moving into a culture where people are just assuming guilt? Or has this come about maybe? I mean, just to give the other side, you know, we do live in a country where rape convictions are very low. A lot of women feel they can't even go to the police because they know that the odds of their case getting to court are pretty much infinitesimal.
Yeah.
So this idea of believe the complainant, even though they use the word victim, they mean complainant. You can understand why people want to do that.
Absolutely. There's an inevitable backlash against a criminal justice system which has failed and is failing. Why it's failing is another massive question. Part of the reason it's failing is it's been systemically starved of resources for over 20 years. So I don't for a moment doubt that women feel, well, there's no point in taking this to the police.
Right.
It will drag on for years. I'm going to be treated like crap. I'm going to have to hand over my phone, my entire digital history revealed. That's true, but that doesn't mean that what people are advocating for now is good, because what they're advocating for now will hurt each and every one of us. Any one of us could be the victim of a malicious or false accusation. Now,
well, activists will say that the false allegations are incredibly rare, and if we don't believe people who make these allegations, we're making it harder for other people who have been...
They may be rare, but they're not impossible. Look at Eleanor Williams. I myself have been the subject of false and malicious accusations. And are people going to turn around to me and say, well, sue them for libel then?
So, I mean, we saw this with Operation Midland, where you had an absolute fantasist making up lies about leading political figures that, I mean, I saw him and knew it was false. And I was surprised that people could even have believed it for a second. But Scotland Yard came out and said they were credible and true. And it ruined people's lives. So we have to be aware that false allegations can happen and do happen for all sorts of reasons.
Well, as a culture, we're losing sight of what I thought was always the police lodestone. Assume nothing, believe nobody, investigate everything.
Yes.
And it's really sad and surprising that the Henrique UK's report appears to have been buried. I can't find it online. And that was a direct response to Operation Midland, going, look, this is crazy. You can't just believe victims. But then that's all tangled up with the Me Too movement. Again, I understand where that's coming from. Women, for a long time, were not believed, were not taken seriously. But as I've always repeatedly said, the moment any investigator starts with a premise of belief, that investigation is fatally flawed and corrupted.
But even the language you've highlighted, the fact that we now say victim rather than complainant, I believe that's a legacy of Keir Starmer's time as Director of Public Prosecutions. That language was changed during his tenure. And, of course, that does presuppose guilt. If you start using that language, even psychologically, even if it is just a shorthand for complainant, it does psychologically change things, doesn't it?
Words really do matter. Of course, victim immediately inspires us to think of a very particular situation. And another argument I've been having with people online is I'm allowed to call him a rapist if I want, but rapist, like a murderer, has a very specific context, and that's from the criminal law context. So I think that is disingenuous to say I have a right to call him XYZ when those are concepts of the criminal law, I think is disingenuous. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, due process is meaningless until it's in a court. I don't think so at all. Not with allegations that are so serious.
And also, Russell Brand has raised the spectre of the online safety bill and has suggested that these allegations and the fact that a Conservative MP wrote to Rumble that it's tied up with this new culture that the government wants to push through. Do you have any thoughts about that? Because that passed this week, didn't it?
I think there must be some truth in that, because from what I understand of the online safety bill, and I'm ashamed to say I haven't really had the time to dig into it, and suddenly I find it's law, just waiting for royal assent, is what it seems to be doing is shoving all accountability off to Ofcom. Ofcom will decide who they investigate and who they fine. And this is terrifying, because this comes from a political culture where, as we know, hate is given such a broad and a woolly meaning that really anybody who offends somebody can said to be hateful. So that's when it starts getting really worrying, when MPs are writing letters asking that people who haven't even been charged, let alone convicted of anything, are to be demonetised.
And we should emphasise these allegations at this point. Strenuously denied allegations. And the way people are talking online, though, is as though they made a decision already in their minds.
Well, it's like you cannot now disbelieve a woman who complains about sexual offending from a man, because that is apologising for rape. I can understand why people feel so strongly, because women haven't been listened to. And still we see rape convictions are so tiny, it's almost as if rape has been decriminalised. But 99% of women who are raped this year are not going to have a dispatches crew following them about. I think to tell women this is the only way you can achieve justice by appealing to mob rule is utterly irresponsible, because most women are not raped by minor TV celebrities and they won't get that kind of coverage. So I think we've got to look at why is the criminal justice system so distrusted, so ineffective, and try and do something about that, not usher in mob rule. We will all suffer from that.
Sarah Fillimore, thanks so much for joining me. Sarah Fillimore there, excellent as ever. She's been on the show a number of times. Cressida, she raised so many interesting points. And, you know, when we talk about Caroline Dinenage, the MP who wrote to Rumble, YouTube and everything else, trying to get someone who'd been accused demonetised, we do have to worry about that when politicians are doing that, don't we?
I think you are. I mean, I don't know on what grounds she thought that was her place.
I mean, isn't she presupposing something there?
Absolutely, and I don't know whether it's to appeal to to people who could vote for her to show, look, I'm on the side of women.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, because I think ultimately this is not on the side of women, because if you muddy the waters and you don't have due process and if you don't keep this sort of stuff really clean and clear, then eventually people are more likely to doubt victims, you know.
Well, then what about that point that I raised with Sarah, that, you know, because the conviction rate is so low, it's probably the hardest thing to prove.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff does come down to he said, she said, you know, and a lot of the cases are reported a long time after the event, makes it even harder. There's genuine trauma involved. I don't blame people who feel they can't come forward. Imagine putting yourself through that process. There's all of that to contend with. But is this the solution, really, just to assume all allegations are true?
Well, no, obviously not, because that's all absolutely true. But the point is, you've just got to have these processes in place, haven't you? For the times when, I mean, I don't know how you go about proving and disproving this. But if it turns out that nothing has happened, we need to go through.
I think we should bring back chaperones. No man and woman of dating age should be allowed to be in the same room with each other.
You joke, but that's where we could end up.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I think men are beginning to become afraid of women. I don't blame them. We're told to be afraid of you guys.
Well, Creston has said you should always get the morning after text, where you get like a text saying, "Oh, I had a wonderful time," and then you go out for breakfast and you be seen with them. Yes. Therefore, you don't get accused of anything.
I didn't say a word of it. Show me the evidence.
Oh, for goodness sake, let's not go down that route. I mean, I have heard stories about men secretly filming dates and things because they're worried about being accused of anything. But that just,
for that reason.
That just strikes me as creepy.
You can't blame them, though, because if we had body cam footage, that would... You know,
I mean, come on, we can't live like that.
No, I completely
But what
agree.
about this problem of social media? The problem is that people do just make a judgment and go with it, you know?
In trouble about social media, one of the worst elements about it, I mean, you just have a mob passing judgment, just, you know, and it often depends on how much they like the person. If they have other reasons to have a grievance with the person, they don't like their opinions, they don't like their political views, they don't like
It's funny, is that, isn't it? A lot of the political opponents of Brand have decided that he's guilty. I wonder why. I wonder why that's happened. Yeah. OK, well, anyway, like we say, due process is really important, and we can't comment either way. We don't know the facts, so, you know. Anyway, coming up after the break, I spoke with fellow GB News presenter John Cleese. That's what he's most known for, where we discussed his career. You won't want to miss that.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
So this year we launched the brilliant show The Dinosaur Hour with John Cleese. I hope you saw all of those episodes. They are available on YouTube if you want to catch up. And earlier in the year I sat down with the man himself to discuss his legendary career. Here's a clip.
done very little television because I'm completely out of touch with the people who are running television, you know. And I mean, early on, I went to Netflix and I gave them 6 ideas, all of which I thought 2 were really good, and 2 were good, and 2 were, and they never even called my agent back. And you kind of think, what are you looking for?
But are they looking for quality or innovation, or are they looking for...
I have no idea, and I don't think they know either.
Well, I mean,
the main thing that you know as you get older is you realise that very few people have any idea what they're doing. You know? Right? It's true. I mean, the worst case of that was when I went on a weekend once with an old friend who used to run the Playboy Club here, who put all the money up for the very first Python film, which is how I knew him. And I met somebody, American television people, and they said, I just bought the rights for 40 towers. We're going to make 40 towers in America. It's about 15 years ago. And I thought, ching, ching, you know, ching, ching. And I said, have you made any changes? And they said, not really, no. They said, well, we made one. We've written Basil out. And they did. They wrote Basil out and gave all his lines to B. Arthur, who also had all of Sybil's lines. And you know, it didn't work.
What a surprise.
Well, how could they have such a truly terrible idea?
That's incredible. I mean, is it just that you get these committees together, these executives, and they sort of don't know quite what they want, but they want to duplicate success that has happened in the past, so you end up with no risk-taking, I suppose?
That's right. People try always to do what's been successful in the past. And I think another thing that happened here, and Griff Rhys-Jones wrote a very good piece about this a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago, is that the top executives now want to be the stars. You see? They want to take the credit for the ideas of the programme. What they need to do, if I was in charge of the BBC, I'd say, who do I think is really good, really great? Eddie Izzard, for example. I'd say, Eddie, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And is there anyone you've always wanted to work with? Because if there is, we'll send you off for a free weekend, and you can just sit and have a nice time and see if there's a show you want to do. In other words, you want the creativity to come from the creative people, but on the whole, they don't trust you. Now, sometimes they give me a show, and then they immediately ask me what I'm going to be doing, and I say, I don't know yet. Because I believe creatively, you mustn't make your mind up too soon.
I suppose if they did that and they just trusted the creatives, you'd end up with the occasional thing that just didn't work.
Oh, yes, because if you try to be creative, you're going to make mistakes, because the whole point is when you're creating something new, you haven't been there before.
Yeah.
So you don't know. So you're going to have a few failures, but you're also going to have some real successes.
But you've talked about this before, that you had this kind of opportunity with the first Monty Python series.
It was fantastic.
Insofar as you could do whatever you wanted.
Well, we went in to see them because I'd suggested to the guys, the others, who were doing a show called Do Not Adjust Your Set, which was a kids' programme, went out at 6 o'clock. And Graham Chapman and I were writing for Peter Sellers back in those days.
Right.
And we rang him up and said, let's do a show together. And then Marty Feldman's writing partner fixed up an interview with a guy called Michael Mills, who was the head of Light Entertainment. And we went in to see Michael. And he said, I gather you'd like to do a series. And we said, we'd love to. And he said, well, what do you propose doing? And you won't believe this. We hadn't discussed it. Can you believe that? Going into a pitch meeting, you haven't actually. So we kind of said, well, we're going to try and make a humorous program with jokes, you know, to make people laugh and gags.
Very specific.
Very specific. And we went on like this for a bit, and he said, are you going to have guest stars? We said, are we going to have guest stars? He said, what about music? We said, oh, music, that's a good idea. It was a disaster. And he looked at us pityingly, and he said, go away and make 13 programs. Unbelievable.
But then when it comes to Fawlty Towers, that seems like something that was very planned or very structured.
Well, it was fairly planned. I mean, I went out to dinner with Jimmy Gilbert, who directed me in The Frost Report with the two Ronnies and David Frost.
Yes.
And he said, what do you want to do after Python? And I said, I'd like to do something with my wife, Connie Booth. And he said, what? I said, I don't know. And he said, well, go back and talk and let me know, and I'll commission it.
Isn't that incredible? That level of trust.
Extraordinary.
I mean...
And then I said, well, we've stayed in a hotel in Torquay. We like to write about that.
Yes.
So he said, OK, and he commissioned it, and we made it. But they trusted us. They trusted us, except after the first show, he said to me, John, you're going to have to get them out of the hotel more. It's a terrible idea.
I mean, we were talking about this the other night, but I did find it astonishing when you told me that so many of the critics were against Fawlty Towers when it came out.
Oh, they didn't like it at all. Daily Mirror said Long John short on jokes.
Yes.
The Spectator hated it, Spectator magazine.
Yeah.
And it was some time, because if you do anything very new, it does take some time for people to get used to it and decide, oh, I like it or I don't like it. But at the beginning, it was like Monty Python. The critics couldn't make anything of Monty Python.
Yes.
So they described what happened in the program without saying whether it was good or bad.
Yes.
And then, after the first series, a lovely guy called Alan Corrin, who used to be the editor of Punch, he wrote a very nice review in the Times, and suddenly everyone decided it was a good show. It's all very random, and there's a lot of luck involved.
Yeah, is that the case with your films as well, with Fish Called Wanda and that kind of thing?
Oh, yes, yes. No, MGM told me it was the most terrible title, and seriously.
Really?
Oh, yes, they were completely against
What did they want to call it?
I can't remember. But I cannot. But this is the problem, as I say, very few people know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it takes you, when you get older, it takes you some time to realise that most people don't know what they're talking about. You know?
So then what would you suggest to sort of young up-and-coming comedy writers? Just do their own thing, or do they have to play the game to an extent?
I would say murder everyone at the BBC and start again. Start again with people who understand a little bit about creativity, and then you'll have a chance.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's all done by committee, because people at the BBC now, they only have one thought when they go into work in the morning. They have one thought, which is, today I must not get fired. You see? They come out of it at the end of the day, they've still got their job, they've had a good day. They should be in the business of making the best possible programmes for the British public.
I should point out that you were speaking figuratively about murdering the BBC, but even that...
No, it wasn't. Even 150,000 people die every day. A few more from the BBC.
But actually, this is a key point. Literal-mindedness. Yes. In a sense, I have to point that out, because someone will be watching, they'll complain, they'll say, he's actually calling for violence against the BBC. And you have to you have to explain it.
Of course.
Otherwise...
Because there are always literal-minded people amongst us, you know, and they're not playing with the full deck. But we have to sort of humour them. There was a great example recently. Oxfam put out a pamphlet advising the people who work for Oxfam about how to talk to people, and they said, if you support their ideas, don't say that you stand with them, because it may upset people who are unable to stand.
Well, John, on that note, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. But Dinosaur Hour, 29th of October, I'm really looking forward to that going ahead.
Yes, and give it a chance. Have a look at the first two.
Yeah.
And the first one is particularly good because it is critical of the press, the right-wing press. And I did that first because some people thought that because I was doing a show for GB News, I'd always been a closet Nazi.
Well, there we are. That's the bit that's going to get clipped and put online. But thank you very much, John Cleese. A pleasure to talk to John, as ever. Jonathan, any thoughts about that interview?
Well, he's just had a life very well lived. He's made so much good stuff, and he's a close personal friend of mine because I work with him on the Dinosaur Hour.
I wouldn't go that far, Jonathan.
No, we're best friends and always will be and always have been. Me and John Cleese.
I mean, you did get a selfie with him, to be fair.
Yeah, and he wasn't happy about that. I also did accidentally... I dropped my rucksack on his private area once as well, accidentally. He pulled me in as a joke to shake hands. He pulled me in, and my bag fell on his area, and then we haven't been so friendly since. But, you know...
So not sure about the whole best friend thing. What do you make of that? It's just such a pleasure to talk to you about these
Well, it's
issues.
very reassuring, isn't it, to hear that he thinks that people don't know what they're doing. That gives me licence to not know what I'm doing. How
Well, quite.
wonderful.
Exactly. Well, anyway, so that was me with John Cleese earlier in the year. Next on Free Speech Nation, I spoke with David Oldroyd-Bolt for a look back on the year in culture and the arts. So don't go anywhere.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. It's time now for a look back at the year in culture and the arts. And as always, I'm joined by the historian and broadcaster, David Oldroyd-Bolt. David, welcome to the show. You're keen to talk about the Arts Council in 2023. What's been going on?
Well, the Arts Council has changed its funding model quite drastically. It has done this apparently in the name of levelling up and diversity of access to the arts. But what it actually has done, and particularly in the case of English National Opera, is insist that English National Opera moves from its home in the Coliseum in London up to Manchester in order to get its £24 million grant from the second half of next year.
OK, now, quickly, why have they done that? What's the rationale behind that?
The rationale is that moving it out of London gives more people access to opera.
Yes.
And this is entirely the opposite of what is going to happen, because the North already has an extremely good, affordable opera house. It's got the Opera North in Leeds at the Grand Theatre.
Yes.
So by moving English National Opera from the Coliseum, English National Opera, for those who don't know, specialises in affordable, so you can have tickets for as little as £10, opera productions in English, of all the standard repertoire and new productions as well. It's an extraordinary opportunity for young singers to come through, and it's one of the most really vital parts of London's art scene, because the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, brilliant as it is, has comparatively few affordable tickets.
Yes, and given the expense involved in mounting production of any opera,
yeah,
we need those affordable tickets, otherwise only the rich will be able to
Well,
go.
exactly. And because the arts, as a group in this country, has a strange aversion to taking money from private industry, and because, frankly, the tax system doesn't incentivise giving on the scale it does in, say, the United States,
yes,
really, the biggest funder of the arts is the state. Now, we would like that to be otherwise, I'm sure, because it has all sorts of restrictive meanings when the state is the great funder of everything.
Yes.
But to move it to Manchester when you already have something in Leeds, the people of Manchester can get to Leeds very much more easily than the people of London or Kent or Devon or Cornwall or Somerset can get to Manchester.
Yes, of course.
You know, and on the day ticket to Manchester from London is about £150.
Yes, there is a perception, isn't there, that arts, when you talk about the opera, when you talk about theatre, what people bracket as high art, that it's not really for poor people. It's for sort of privately educated middle-class people.
Of course, and it's entirely fallacious, this idea. But by moving it away from London, which is the hub of the south,
yes,
I would argue that Leeds is the hub of the north. You might make an argument for Birmingham, but let's say we've already got Leeds and London, then you have Welsh National Opera, which has been hit badly by funding, and
yes,
Scottish National Opera. It seems to me that all the parts of Great Britain are fairly well covered by this. And it's this bizarre association of the poor with the North and the Midlands that the predominantly privately educated middle-class people running the Arts Council seem to have, which I'd say is rather insulting in the first instance, and very badly thought out in the second, because there are just as many people in the South who are not from what are traditional, perhaps, high arts-going backgrounds, who I'm sure would go to these things and do go to these things. You know, the attendance figures for ENO are really not bad,
yes,
compared with a lot of other state-funded arts operations. But moving this away means that none of those people now have the chance.
So what do we do? You know, a lot of people will say, well, you know, there's a cost of living crisis going on. Poor people are concerned about making ends meet. Why are we worried about providing them with affordable opera?
Because life is so much more than the utilitarian. It is so much more than just food and drink and survival. I would argue that life without a cultural side to it is only a half life. What's the point of mere existence if you don't have the enrichment of great art, whether that be opera, or whether that be literature, or whether that be theatre?
Yes.
And I think if we are to have a state-funded model, to some degree, then part of the incumbent duty of that state-funded model is to ensure that everybody around the country has at least reasonable access to great art.
Do you think that the Arts Council is doing a fairly reasonable job of cultivating interesting projects? Because a lot of the time people do criticise it and say, well, they're more interested in outreach, or they're more interested in projects that can be said to demonstrate some kind of benefit for some kind of struggling or minority group. Whereas actually, you know, often they'll point to one of the projects that they funded that went on to have huge success in the West End and say that proves our viability. But actually, that's not necessarily what they should be funding, is it?
No, it's a drop in the ocean. In fact, the Emeritus Director of the Arts Council we spoke about recently had come out and said he doesn't agree with a lot of the funding of this because it is these things for the sake of diversity.
Yes.
There are these things for the sake of having, say, a troupe of gay actors or black actors or disabled actors. Now, there's nothing wrong with encouraging people from what are considered minority backgrounds to go into the arts, but to fund those exclusively and to fund them when they're not very good pieces of art or theatre or music seems to me a total waste of taxpayers' money. Let that be funded by community groups. If they're so interested in this, let that go to there. I think our money ought to be spent in the best way possible, which means on the highest possible standard of artistic expression.
So quality over politics.
Yes.
What do you think could be done in 2024? You know, we're looking forward to this year. In terms of the arts world generally, is there something that we could all do to kind of make it thrive a little bit more?
Yes, go to it.
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing. Instead of, say, I don't know, instead of buying the extra coffee every day, save that money and go to something at a local theatre. Because there are many, many theatre groups around the country doing great work. Rep Theatre still just about clings on by its fingernails. Go to something. Or spend a bit of money, come to London while the ENO is still here and go to that. But more broadly, everybody who has an interest in the arts ought to be hoping that it gets greater funding. And the way to that is not through the state. The way to that is encouraging through political pressure and through any activism you can do, the changing of the taxation model here so that it more nearly replicates that of the United States, where the arts are in a much healthier state. Where, for instance, the first desk violinist of the Dallas Symphony Orchestra earns $250,000, whereas the first desk violinist of the London Symphony Orchestra earns £50,000.
OK.
So this is what happens if you stop being so, let's say, pernickety about your sources of funding and stop being so precious about everything coming from the state, as many in the arts are. You see a great flood of cash But we have to lobby both main political parties to include this in their next manifestos. There's going to be an election next year, and we must make sure there's something about the arts in there.
Well, I hope they will take your advice. David Oldroyd-Bolt, thanks so much for joining me. That was a pre-recorded interview when there was an audience in the room, and yes, I was wearing the same tie. But that is the end of the first hour on Free Speech Nation. But please do not go anywhere, because there is so much more to come between now and 9 o'clock.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, as we go into a brand new year, for most of us on New Year's Day, we will see some sunshine, but unfortunately there is more rain to come. So as we end 2023, we've still got this area low pressure hanging around. Note the tightly packed isobars, especially in the south, indicating a blustery end to the year. Warnings are in force throughout the rest of today. Generally, a mixture of clear spells and scattered showers. The showers could potentially be quite heavy, especially across northwestern England. I think for the belts themselves, generally central belt of Scotland, probably best to see the driest of the weather. Overnight, in the clear skies, it will turn quite chilly with a touch of frost across the north. So first thing on New Year's Day, we will see some sunshine across the south, but that will be gradually replaced by some cloud and eventually some outbreaks of rain. So I think come the afternoon, the best of the sunshine will be northern England northwards. There will be a few showers around, especially for the northern Isles of Scotland. And temperatures tomorrow generally ranging between 5 to 7 in the north, potentially up to 11 degrees across the south. And then on to Tuesday, a wet day for a lot of the UK, a band of rain, potentially some hill snow for Scotland, and then some very wet weather for southern areas of the UK. Could also turn quite windy too. Temperatures on the face of it in the south into double figures, but factor in that rain and wind, it's not going to feel too great. And unfortunately, the unsettled weather continues into Wednesday and into Thursday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
And there's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this New Year's Eve. I spoke with the deputy editor of Spiked about what we can expect for 2024, and also the pop icon Carol Decker from Tapau will be here, and plus some questions from last week's studio audience. But let's get a news update first from Sophia Wensler.
Thank you, Andrew. It's 8 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. The Queen of Denmark has shocked the nation, announcing in her New Year's message that she'll vacate the throne. Queen Margaret II has reigned for more than half a century. She made the announcement on live television moments ago. She's due to step down on the 14th of January, exactly 52 years after she took the throne in 1972. She'll be succeeded by son Crown Prince Friedrich. Rishi Sunak struck an optimistic tone in his New Year message, promising a brighter future with tax cuts and a reduction in national insurance. He's described 2023 as a momentous year, which saw inflation halved and record investment in the NHS. That's despite junior doctors in England planning their longest walkout in NHS history next month. The Prime Minister says his New Year's resolution is to keep driving forward.
Inflation is set to fall further, cutting the cost of living for everyone. And we're not stopping there. We're going further to grow our economy by reducing debt, cutting taxes and rewarding hard work, building secure supplies of energy here at home, backing British business and delivering world-class education.
Meanwhile, the Labour leader says the power to shape the future of Britain rests in everyone's hands. Sir Keir Starmer's message offered a preview of his party's election campaign, saying 2024 needs to give Britain its future back.
In the Labour Party, we've been building to this for 4 years. We're confident we have a plan that can move our country forward, end the cost of living crisis, take back our streets, get the NHS back on its feet, cheaper energy bills for your home, more opportunities for your children.
The family of a mother and her son who were killed in an avalanche in the French Alps say they're beyond heartbroken. Kate Vokes, who was 54, died when an avalanche swept through an off-piste slope on Mont Blanc on Thursday. Her 22-year-old son Archie was also killed. He had achieved his level 1 ski instructor qualification just a year earlier. Their family asked for privacy, saying the tragic accident had left a hole in their lives. Britain's New Year celebrations are still a few hours away, but the party's already started in other parts of the world. Happy New Year to India, Hong Kong, as well as Japan, Taiwan, Thailand and Australia. Hong Kong celebrated with a huge fireworks display over Victoria Harbour in front of hundreds of thousands of people. In Australia, the famous Harbour Bridge and Sydney Opera House were alight with colours and sparkle. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Let's look ahead to 2024 now with our lovely audience here. And I'm joined by comedians Bruce Devlin and Josh Howie. We've got a question from Vicky. Where's Vicky? Hi.
Hi there. Are you confident I'll be able to afford to put my heating on again in 2024?
Well, Vicky, are you confident? I mean, heating prices keep going up. Every month there's another news item about how they've hiked it again. Do you feel that this is something that affects you personally?
It does, yeah, and I've been doing lots to try and save money. borrowing from like Martin Lewis quite heavily at the moment.
Is he giving out money?
He's not. He's giving out his tips. It's always just it.
A lot of people are concerned about this. This seems to be one of the major issues that keeps coming up again and again. Josh, what do you think about this? Because it's one of those things. Do the politicians get it? You know, they haven't really got to the nub of this problem, have they?
No, they're not human.
They're not human beings, are they? No, they're effectively cyborgs.
I mean, look, we've got someone like poor old Vicky here who is having to come here to be in the audience to heat up.
Yes, exactly.
This is what she's doing.
And we have no air conditioning, so this has worked pretty well.
Yeah, I'm sorted for a year or so.
Exactly. Well, it is difficult, though, isn't it? Because how do you deal with the problem of this magnitude?
Well, the problem is I don't want to get too boring about it, but the problem goes deeper than the present situation. We've got the underlying institutions, the energy companies, and our storage, and all of these factors have all come into play, unfortunately, at the same time. Yeah. And we've got massive uninvestment.
Well, a lot of politicians put it down to the war in Ukraine as well.
Yeah, but that's because it suits them, because that's outside of their responsibility. But it's not. These are their responsibility, because what it is we've focused on Brexit and a few other issues over the last decade or so.
Yes.
And they haven't done any long-term planning. And the system has kept on growing, and we need more and more energy. And they haven't taken the necessary steps, and the energy companies have just been taking profits out of the system.
Yeah,
it's not funny. I don't know when we're actually going to get to a point if the ship can be changed enough for so many years' time. We can get back to things being a reasonable. Look, we pay for energy. That's, of course, we pay. It's a good we pay for. But when it is extortionate, and when you see these companies making billions.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the thing that upsets people, isn't it, Bruce? Like, you know, we see these people getting bonuses of millions and millions as they're hiking their prices, and poor people can't. I mean, it's been going up hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Most people, that's the difference between life and death, you know.
No, I know. I thought you were looking at me.
No, I wasn't accusing you,
My
Bruce.
God,
I
honestly.
wasn't saying it's your fault.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, that
So
was what your eyes told me.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe check yourself. No, I completely agree. It's a huge, you know, like you say, there's nothing funny in it. Yeah, you could make snide comments or whatever. It's really concerning for the vast majority of people. I don't know if you will be able to, but I hope you can.
Our next question is from Catherine.
Hi, will anyone just stop oil?
Yeah, they've been pretty much in the news constantly throughout 2023. Catherine, are you a fan of Just Stop Oil?
No, I hate them. I think everybody hates them, and I think they're turning everybody off environmentalism generally.
So this is the problem, isn't it, Bruce, is that Just Stop Oil, every time they do these protests where they glue themselves to the motorway, they stop people getting to hospitals, they throw soup on works of art, they just alienate all the people that they should be trying to persuade, right?
No, completely, and I completely agree with you. I think everything they do, they see as a stunt. Whether or not they're getting the press attention that they claim that they want, are they getting the right press attention? Right. Because nothing has changed.
Well, people are all talking about it. We constantly talk about them, so that's working.
Yeah, but it's only we're talking about them in the fact that we can't stand them. We could gladly rip their hands up from the pavement, which they did in Spain, and I'm moving because I believe in that kind of life. And yeah, I don't understand why they keep wasting food. I mean, what is a painting done that's so wrong that you want to throw a tin of soup at it?
Yeah, what is their thing about the arts, Josh? They always go after the arts, either standing up in the middle of Les Miserables, which you are particularly exercised about.
We were appalled.
Yes, and then artworks, National Gallery, places like that.
I think of all of them, that one winds me up the most.
Well, the Les Miserables one?
Look, just anything to do with the art and anything that might ruin art in any form.
Yeah.
Because it's so disrespectful. I mean, I know, look, you've got people dying in ambulances. I mean, or waiting.
Yeah.
These are terrible things. But when we're talking about the heritage of humankind and the best of what our cultures produce, it's the opposite of that. And it's just it's so they're so arrogant in their belief, and it's not even like they're necessarily even wrong. Maybe I'd agree to the
in terms of their cause.
Yeah. But just like this idea that we'll destroy art because that shows otherwise we're not going to have any art at all or what.
Yeah, well, they say, you know, why do you care about a painting of some sunflowers if the Earth is going to end?
Yeah, it's a false logic.
It is a false logic.
Yeah.
OK, well, let's move on now to a question from Marcus. Where is Marcus?
Hi. Will America elect a septuagenarian or an octogenarian in 2024?
Good question, Marcus. So you're talking presumably about Trump or Biden. Yes. Do you have a preference yourself?
No, not really. Someone with a bit of honour, really, but I don't think any of them.
Why do you think, Marcus, that Americans seem to prefer elder statesmen, shall we say?
I don't have a clue. I don't know. They're suspected respect and honour.
Yeah, okay. Well, no, I respect older people. I just don't want them running the country. And not because, no. Well, but look, when they're in their 80s, I kind of think just rest a bit.
Yeah,
Take the opportunity.
I agree.
Yeah.
Biden does look a wee bit tired.
Doesn't he just? Yeah. That's putting it kindly, I think.
That's very kind.
Yeah.
And I don't know where Trump continues to find whatever he glues to the top of his head.
Yeah, I mean, that must take effort.
Stop.
Yeah.
That's like dehydrated wool.
So, and I understand that you wouldn't want a bunch of 30-year-olds running the country because they've had no life experience.
I barely want 30-year-olds in this studio/office, let alone running the country.
No, but there's a lot of young people here, which Bruce is very exercised by. But you want someone in the middle, don't you? You want someone who's sort of 50, 60, who has had some life experience but can still speak. Which at the moment we don't have that with Biden.
Or pop up a flight of stairs.
Yes.
And get to the top.
Yeah. Well, that would be a start, wouldn't it? Everyone's worried about Biden. I don't even think the Democrats wanted Biden to run again.
No,
but they are sort of stuck with him, aren't they?
Yeah, and then they've got Kamala. I mean, in an ideal world, maybe he would get rid of Kamala for the next election.
Really?
Get someone decent in there.
Kamala Harris?
Yeah, get rid of her.
Oh, right, get rid of her, I see.
Yeah, get rid of her as the vice president, and then he may well die. I'm not saying that's a good thing, I'm just saying, but if he does, then there is someone...
Well, the odds are certainly in his favour, aren't they? Yeah,
there's exactly every day.
He's also maybe in a cold house.
Yeah, well, there's that.
Yeah.
I mean, that must be difficult to heat, that White House.
I would imagine.
Yeah, so some sympathy is warranted. OK, let's get a question from Mike. Hi, Mike.
Is a Labour government inevitable?
Good question, Mike. Do you think at this point the Tories should just pack it in? Because, I mean, do you think that there's any chance that the Tories can turn it round?
No.
There we go. Very succinct and probably right. I mean, all of the polls again and again seem to suggest that the Tories are done. So why don't they just use this opportunity to do, like, one or two amazing things before they go?
Well, because they won't.
No.
And it's a word that you used earlier. It's arrogance. You know, they're not necessarily bothered about the good of the country. They just want to deal with their legacy and continue, you know what I mean, being on that gravy train sort of thing. We've seen that with politicians over the past couple of years.
But what could Labour do to lose?
What could they do to lose?
Because at this point, it just looks like they could get away with anything.
Do you think it's a done deal?
Well, Josh is very much wants Labour to get in, don't you?
Well, I prefer them to the Tories.
Yes.
I have a sneaking suspicion that Keir Starmer might actually be good for the country. It's a sneaking suspicion. We'll see. I'm not going to... Don't hold me to that, but I wonder if he's deliberately...
I'm going to clip this and play it back to you when he ruins absolutely everything.
But I wonder if he's just... All he has to do is just not say anything for the next however many months.
Yes.
And then I wonder if he actually gets in, we might see someone with some morality or whatever. But a lot of leaders, it's about who's around them and who's feeding them the narrative.
Yeah.
And if he can actually get some real people and being honest around him, which I don't think he had when it came to what a woman is and stuff like that.
Yes.
But I think then finally some people did actually go, wait a minute.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be great if he had some backbone himself, if he had some principles himself, if he didn't keep flip-flopping about every single thing?
Well, but then, yes. But at the same time, like I said, he's playing this fear game.
Yeah.
Of course, you want someone who's just going to come out of the block and go, "This is what I believe in. These are my morals. This is what I stand for."
Yeah, so we know what we're voting for.
Yeah, exactly. But he has just made a bet where he's going, if I just shut up and just keep to this path of nothingness, then that should get me in. Then we'll see if... what I'm hoping is maybe when he gets there, maybe we'll see that person emerge. Maybe we won't. But saying that, he's been good on this, the whole Israel situation.
Yes.
He's called that correctly.
Yeah, but I just wish that politicians would start saying what they believe openly rather than trying to calculate what they think we want them to say, and then we can vote accordingly. That would be the better way of approaching this, wouldn't it? But we're not going to get that anytime soon. Listen, don't go anywhere because there is plenty more to come on this New Year's Eve Free Speech Nation.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So, with just a couple of weeks to go until the end of the year, what better time to reflect on the current state of free speech in the UK and around the world? Are advocates of free speech starting to win the argument, or are the forces of repression, censorship and cancel culture only getting stronger and stronger? Spiked Online has always been an advocate of freedom of expression, and Deputy Editor Fraser Myers joins me now. Welcome to the show, Fraser. Thanks for having me. So, free speech, where are we at the moment? Every year I kind of think, are we getting better? Are more people becoming alert to the problem? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I think the picture is quite grim, actually, I think it's fair to say. For us in the UK, you can be arrested for posting a gender-critical tweet. You can have your protest shut down before it even starts on suspicion of causing a public nuisance. You can have your bank account removed from you if you hold contentious political views. And around the world, social media can take down your posts if they are so-called misinformation.
Yes.
That could even encompass things that are true, but that the authorities have decided are wrong in some way.
Why don't people understand why this is a bad thing? I mean, I saw a survey that said that a quarter of Labour voters think it's fine for a bank to debank you if they disagree with what you say in the wake of the Nigel Farage case. Why can't they see that this is going to bite them eventually?
I think that's the issue. I think a lot of the time people think, well, it's only wrong-uns who are being affected.
So people who don't agree with them,
people who don't, yeah. I think there are very few people who understand that why free speech is so important as a principle for all of us, why it matters, that it's not, you know, it's the same for everyone. We're all affected when someone's free speech is harmed. And you kind of see that sometimes where on the right, recently, you know, a lot of people on the right have made a big show of standing up for free speech, but they're sort of indifferent when, say, pro-Palestinian events are shut down or pro-Palestinian people are cancelled, or they will call for the so-called hate marches in London to be banned. So often there is this sort of tit for tat when it comes to free speech. People just don't, if it's happening to the other side, they don't really care.
Yeah, that really worries me. I think you just need to have a consistent stance. I mean, particularly when it comes to protest. You know, I was very worried about the way in which the government snuck through that sort of anti-protest measure before the coronation. Yeah. And then this recent one that they've put in so that they can effectively ask anyone to leave for whatever reason, and if they don't, they can then arrest them. I mean, this kind of thing shouldn't be going on in a free society, should it?
It's incredibly dangerous, and we saw with the coronation that law came immediately into use, and, you know, sort of anti-monarchy protesters were told their protests would be shut down because they were, you know, there was a suspicion that they might cause a public nuisance. There's a law which is kind of understandable against locking on, where lots of Extinction Rebellion protesters in the past have sort of tied themselves, you know, using bike clocks to things. So there was a specific law put into that. But the Republic protesters were accused of having locking-on devices because they had some sort of ties that were just being used to hold their placards together.
Right,
So
okay.
already that was taken as evidence of, you know, their ill intent. Meanwhile, on the other hand, you know, you see that there's an enormous double standard over these protests. So you have the huge kind of pro-Palestine protests, and there are elements of that that are, you know, genuinely anti-Semitic, genuinely quite hateful, and they are kind of given a free pass by the police. You know, the police have, people might have seen the Metropolitan Police say, well, there are different meanings of jihad. It's not necessarily an arrestable offence. Now, I don't think those people should be arrested. I think they have every right to express their views, no matter how hateful. But I think when, you know, censorship does make hypocrites of us all.
Yes, we've heard a lot about two-tiered policing.
Absolutely. It does drag the police into being political actors.
Yeah, and the police have been very guilty of arresting people, investigating people, sending threatening tweets. They do seem to believe that it's their job to police our thoughts and our words.
Absolutely, and in particular, you've seen that the British police have effectively become the armed wing of gender ideology. You know, recently a woman was hauled before the police, you know, told she would have to do an interview or be arrested because she tweeted things as simple as trans women are women. She said that...
Well, trans women are not.
Sorry, trans women are men.
Yeah.
And she said things like, it's, you know, it's mutilation to transition a child. These are perfectly normal opinions for people to hold. These are legal opinions.
But even if they were extreme opinions, surely in a free society we have to be able to stand up for everyone's right to say what they think.
That's absolutely right, and I think, you know, the challenge for us as free speech advocates, I mean, in many ways we've sort of been playing the game on easy mode for a long time, because so many of the cases that we see are so patently absurd. Everyone can see that, hang on, that person should not have been arrested, hang on, that person should not have been sacked for saying something relatively normal, for expressing a relatively normal political view. But we have to get better at fighting the more difficult cases.
And what do we make of it? A lot of people will stick by this idea that there is no problem with cancel culture and that there is no problem, particularly on universities, with free speech. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's just delusional. I mean, it doesn't matter how many cases you bring to their attention, they will just refuse to accept it. I think what people do is they will find ways of saying, oh, this isn't a free speech case because it's really about safety or something like that.
Right, yeah.
This isn't a free speech case because it's really about discrimination. So you have to be very wary of that when people try and drag things off the terrain of free speech. When people essentially, or it's harassment is another one, when people essentially say that words, or try to pretend that words are actions, when they clearly are not. Of course, actions should be dealt with completely differently.
And the final challenge, I suppose, will be big tech, won't it? What do you make of it at the moment?
Big tech, I mean, there's some pros and cons. I mean, Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter has been a net positive for free speech. I'm not going to be an Elon Musk cheerleader and pretend that the free speech issue is solved even on X or Twitter, because it plainly hasn't been. But that has been a positive. And one thing that's come out of it is the Twitter files. Now, this year we saw, I mean, that's been going on for a couple of years, different things have been coming out, but this year something really interesting came out where we saw how Twitter was working with Stanford University and to determine what is mis and disinformation. And often some of the things that they were considering disinformation or misinformation were plainly true, they just had the wrong political outcome.
Wow.
So Anthony Fauci's genuine emails, for instance, caused a lot of concern among these academics because they might undermine distrust in science.
Yes.
Not because they're actually wrong, but because they're right, and it might give the wrong impression to people.
I mean, that's very dangerous. So ultimately, we can't really trust the government, we can't trust big tech. We should... Free speech for all is a great general principle because that solves everything, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You cannot trust anyone else to be in charge of what you are allowed to say or think, because we all have our own biases, we all have our own problems, and, you know, no one in power it can make these decisions well. Clearly, you know, I don't think there's any such thing as good censorship. But if you were looking at what gets censored today, in Britain, in America, around in the Western world, you would say that is an absurd, untenable situation. Entirely mainstream opinions are being censored.
Absolutely. Very scary stuff. All right, Fraser Myers, thanks so much for joining me tonight. Thank you. OK, so I spoke there to Fraser Myers from Spiked Online, talking about free speech, Cressida. One of the things that Fraser said that I thought was really important was the way in which the police, there was a lot of police overreach when it comes to offensive comments online. Are you all right there, Jonathan?
I tell you what, free speech, fine. Premium speech, much better.
OK, well, just get back to your Prosecco and we will... I'm just going to talk to Cressida for a moment.
Free drinking.
Yes, it's New Year's Eve. What do you, what do you think, Cressida?
About Jonathan or the police. Yeah, police overreach, terrifying, isn't it?
And people being arrested for misgendering, for instance, that kind of thing. That autistic teenager arrested.
Lesbian Nana.
The lesbian Nana story.
Exactly.
Jonathan, I'm going to come to you in a minute. Don't worry about it. Right, Cressida.
So it's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the bigger problem, I think, is that people don't necessarily think it's a problem.
Yes.
And I can't understand why they aren't offended like we are.
No, absolutely. Are you offended, Jonathan?
So you talk about lesbian Nana, sorry?
I'm offended by you drinking Prosecco out the bottle, I have to be honest.
Prosecco?
But, yeah. Sorry, we couldn't afford the champagne.
No, not in this climate.
No. Anyway, happy about free speech?
I think it's pretty good.
There we go. That's the take of the year. Free speech is pretty good. I'm going to get a black coffee for Jonathan, and we're going to come back because there's a long night ahead of us. And don't go anywhere at all, because coming up next, I sat down with the wonderful singer and musician Carol Decker, and we discussed her career and her many successes. So please, don't go anywhere.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome Welcome back to this New Year's Eve special of Free Speech Nation. Now, I spoke with the pop sensation Carol Decker. She's the lead vocalist of the band T'Pau and has had international success. Let's hear what she had to say. I mean, you've had such an amazing career. You've written so many fantastic songs. This is the thing about you. It's, you know, people know you as a singer and performer, but you co-wrote all of them.
I did, yeah, and it's not 5 decades. I'm not 10 years longer than Madonna.
No, sorry, 4 decades.
4 decades,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, that's an important correction.
That's where the similarity ends. We don't have quite the same bank account or career.
Is that right? Give it time. Madonna's on the slide.
Yeah, I'm an 80s babe, yeah. She's got that knee problem.
She does, exactly. It's over for Madonna. It's over for Madonna. But, no, you know, you've written so many incredible songs, and people would be interested to know about how are you inspired to do this? They probably don't know that China in Your Hand is partly based on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
It is, yeah. So songwriting for me and for my mainly songwriting partner, Ron Rogers, it's quite eclectic, so we can get ideas from some chords and melody. Heart and Soul, our first big international hit, was written because we got a keyboard with a sequencer in, so you can program the notes and it plays on a loop. And Ronnie programmed in dun dun da da dun dun dun, which is the bass line to Heart and Soul, and so we wrote that song around a new toy. And then I do love my telly, and I do love a documentary. So I was watching this fantastically informative documentary about Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that Mary Shelley, well, she was married to Percy Bysshe Shelley, and she was 19 when she wrote it.
Yes.
And it was this big pulp fiction hit and caused so much fracture in their sort of elite intellectual group of friends. They fell out with Lord Byron. It was, you know, there was lots of bitchiness going on. And I thought, well, that's wheels within wheels. So the whole thing with Frankenstein, where man plays God and he creates, you know, in his own image, and it's a terrible tragedy. It's a very sad story.
Yes.
And then within that story is all the trouble the book caused. So it captivated me, and I wrote the song China in Your Hand, which is like fragility, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, be careful of your dreams becoming reality and everything that can happen.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that, you know, I've been listening also to some of your more recent songs, and they're just as good as the older songs, and there's a real continuity in terms of what you do, and it's just some things take off at some points and some things don't. Heart and Soul was huge in America, but not so big here, right?
It was a huge flop here, and it was thanks to the American public and the Billboard chart and the late, great Casey Kasem, who seemed to wear a Christmas sweater every day of the year, who pioneered us, and it got re-released in the UK.
Yes.
And it went to #4 in the UK, and then it went top 5 around Europe and lots of other places as well. So we got a reprieve. But, yeah, it was... the label over here were not happy, and they're brutal record companies. You're out if you don't make them their money back straight away.
Absolutely.
So we got a reprieve and then got to have...
But when you started T'Pau, did you expect it to become as big as it did?
No, not really. I don't know what I expected entirely. All I wanted was I wanted to have a single out.
Yes.
And then I wanted to be on Top of the Pops, because that's...
Who doesn't?
Yeah, that was the show that we all watched, and it was multi-generational, and there wasn't much choice then, was there? There was just that one big show. So it's like, box, tick that box, tick that box. And then when China in Your Hand took off like a rocket, it opened so many doors for us, and then lots of boxes were ticked. We sold out Wembley, we sold out the NEC, I was on all the big festivals, I was flying all over the world, meeting the great and the good. We did the Princess Trust concerts, me and Diana, like that. This is a true story. We were doing a photo call after a Princess Trust, and the photographer said the corniest thing. He said, "Everybody say cheese," and I was next to her, standing on a box, because we were about, 4 foot difference in height. And she went to me, she said, "Say bitch, you get a sexier smile."
That's fantastic.
She was super fun,
And all of this happens very quickly, and you suddenly become big, suddenly become famous. And of course, you weren't used to that. You know, this was a whole new, different world. How did you find it?
I loved it. I took to it like a duck to water. It's what I wanted. I wanted to be successful, and I wanted to be famous. I didn't know to what degree it would go. So I got used to it very, very quickly. I know some of the bands struggled a bit, particularly Ronnie Rogers, who was my partner at the time. He's quite a reserved guy, and he found a lot of the attention quite a strain. He's much more of a a proper creative musician I was going to be a star. I was ready for my close-up.
He's not a diva, no.
He's not a diva.
No.
and it was hard on the rest of the band. A lot of them were married. At one point, we were on the road for 17 months straight. Yes. All those marriages all went...
Really?
Well, you're away from home. In our business, the more successful you get, the more you're away from home. It's really...
Yeah, you hear about the stress on famous people when they're out on the road.
Oh, they can find comfort. There's always someone in the crew ready to comfort.
Oh, OK. Let's not get too many details on that. But, you know, we should definitely see a clip of you performing, if that's all right, Carol.
Sure.
I think we've got something lined up. Let's have a look. Absolutely fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
That is wonderful. And that's... I mean, it really suits that big kind of song, having a full orchestra. That was last year, wasn't it?
That was probably a couple of years ago, but I've done that show last year.
Yeah.
So that same orchestra, which is Opera North, who are... Big shout-out to Opera North, they're fantastic, and Cliff Masterson, our conductor there. And yes, well, obviously, back in the day, we used synthetic strings.
Yes,
and that
exactly.
they were born in the 80s, those big Jupiter 8 keyboards and the amazing sounds. You couldn't tell it wasn't an orchestra, to be honest. But to play with that calibre of musician, I do a lot of orchestral shows now. I did a huge tour across Germany last December with a 60-piece orchestra. Tingles up the back of my neck every night. They're just epic, and it's such a privilege to work with them.
But you do like the drama, don't you? Just I don't mean that. I mean, in terms of the style of songwriting as well. I mean, there is actually a big range of styles and things. You know, a song like Soul Destruction, very different to that kind of song, very poppy. Yeah. But you also have the big ballads, and it feels like you really let yourself go when it comes to those sorts of songs.
I do, and a lot of those songs, I have to give Ronnie his credit, because Ronnie loves hymns.
Right.
And, you know, and his dad used to play the organ. So, you know, all those massive chord I'm always ripping hymns off. You know.
Really? Didn't realise they were the source of inspiration.
Well, no, just that kind of style.
Yeah.
I don't want to get sued by God. That kind of style, the magnificent chord progressions. And for me, my parents' record collection, my father in particular, all the divas, Barbra Streisand, Shirley Bassey, Ella Fitzgerald, Dinah Washington. So I was raised on big voices and big hair. So,
big voices, big hair. That's a great motto. And, you know, those sort of shows you're doing all the time now, and they're big stadiums now. And there's something very interesting about what they call it the Rewind Festival, for instance, where there's various bands from the 80s and 90s coming together, and they're hugely popular, aren't they?
Absolutely massive. The original Rewind is in Henley-on-Thames. That's now, I think, 40,000 strong.
Yeah.
And it's a huge festival, and there's other brands as well that do a similar thing. And it's fantastic because I do 4 songs and then I'm back at the bar.
Yes, of course, because you're sharing the
and the
stage
audience get the hits. So it's like a compilation album on the stage. So there's no fillers, no boring bits.
Of course. You got any gossip about all the old 80s stars?
Do you know what? I haven't. It's going to be boring. If you'd have asked me back in the Top of the Pops day, we were all ready to bitch about each other. But no, it's all hail fellow well met. We're all that much older. And we've all survived in a very tricky business.
Yes,
so it's usually a glass of wine and how you doing, and I'll see you at the next one, because we bump into each other all the time. It's... You know, we're all on these different festivals and we're always working together all the time. It's great.
In terms of the whole process and career, what do you prefer? Do you prefer getting in the studio, crafting the songs, putting it all together, or is it things like that, just being out in front of the audience?
It's a combo of both. I love making a song work, and it still fascinates me 40 years after I wrote my first song, listening to some crumb of an idea build and get created and get layered and all the rest of it. But when I do a gig like that one you just showed, it's just epic. And I can't believe all these years later I'm still doing it.
You're still doing it, but you must get... I mean, the audiences are a big part of it, aren't they?
Yes.
In terms of what they give to you as a performer as well.
Yeah, well, I barely have to sing China in Your Hand because everybody sings it at you, you know. So, and sometimes if I get the lyrics wrong... I do!
that happen?
I do, yeah. You put something from the second verse into the first verse, and people write to me and say, why did you sing that line there? They're like, really?
But it's really great that you can still perform live to such huge audiences, because a lot of people don't get to do that.
No.
And musicians, let's be honest, don't get a good deal out of the digital world, out of Spotify, out of those sort of things.
We don't know. The top 2% can call the shots. The rest of us mere mortals, streaming has decimated our royalty income.
Right.
And, you know, don't get out your tiny violin and all the rest of it. But lots of musicians, they're not making a lot of money. I'm lucky to have had some hits in the 80s that still generate something for me, and I'm grateful for that. But a lot of emerging musicians, they're not earning any money, so the record company will get it and the platform will get it and they get the crumbs, and it's not right, and we're always lobbying for our fair share. That's all we want, our fair share.
Well, also, you know, as artists, you put all this into it, and then you deserve to be rewarded for it.
Absolutely.
You know? Now, a lot of people watching will be wondering how they can see you, but you are performing all the time. So
I am.
How will people be able to find you and go and see your shows?
The socials. We've got the website, which is topow.co.uk, and then there's Facebook is topow/Carol Decker, and I'm still on X, but I'm thinking of coming off it because I get pulled into arguments and I get into trouble.
Oh, don't we all?
Stop that. And then Instagram, you can find me, and if you want to come see us or if you want to avoid us, you can find out where we are. Yeah.
Carol, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Carol Decker, everyone. The brilliant Carol Decker there. Any thoughts, Cressida, about creative?
Well, how lovely to be able to do it for 40 years.
I know, yeah,
It
exactly.
feels like she's just having the time of her life forever, like an X Factor winner, but all the time. That's amazing.
And of course, as I mentioned in the interview, you know, she writes the songs as well as performs the songs, and I'm interested in the creative process, even though, you know, writing pop songs is not my thing. No. But creating comedy, there is a comparable thing there, I think.
Yeah, I think, well, it's taking the way you see the world and spitting it out with your flavour, isn't it?
Exactly.
It goes through you as a lens.
Yeah, any thoughts on it? Because you write songs, don't you?
I write songs. I've written quite a few rock songs in my time. I'm in a band, play music.
Yes.
Written some musical songs. I think there's definitely a similarity there. It is, like you say, it's through you. I'm trying to be as sober as possible now.
You have sobered up remarkably quickly, haven't you?
Well, Andrew, I went to the toilet and helped myself to a bump of Chang-a-lang. So
what does that mean?
I don't know. You have to Google it.
Wasn't that a song by the Bay City Rollers?
Yeah, it's one of mine, actually.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
No, but I am rolling. But yeah, no, it's... what do I think? It's a beautiful thing. It's the most satisfying process.
And I really like this idea of the rewind show, you know, where you have these... a lot of acts all on the same bill.
I want to book tickets for me and Bruce Devlin. He'll love that. Big headliners night out there.
I think that would be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. My Twitter feed is just really intense political discussion and comedy, and then Bruce Devlin posting Kylie Minogue.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah. But you're in a band.
Yes.
So you've had similar experiences to Carol.
Yeah, we play we're not to the same extent. A big show for us would be maybe a big London show for us might be 1,000 people.
Right.
Which is an amazing experience to play for.
Yeah.
It's not a stadium, but it's a beautiful thing. And
seems a lot to me.
Yeah,
it's enough. It's enough to crowd surf.
Definitely enough to crowd surf.
Does that happen at the gigs?
It does. I've done it a few times. Yeah. Although one time I got I don't want to say sexually assaulted, but pretty much.
I mean, let's move on. Cressida.
Okay, so I was crowd surfing.
Explain the story.
Who was assaulting who?
Yeah, what's the story?
Some of the fans are very busy hands, and I'm going along in my skinny jeans.
Yes.
And let's be honest, I'm a prize, and they were all reaching for me.
Look, I don't want to victim blame here, but if you're crowd surfing, you need some hands, or
also, when you're crowd surfing, aren't you meant to be on your back?
Well, I like to go on my front.
Well, maybe the problem is you.
I bet Carol Decker doesn't do it like that.
No, I bet she doesn't. So, are you familiar with T'Pau and their work?
I'm familiar with China in Your Hand.
Yes.
Which is the hit everybody knows off the Best of the 80s cassette.
She has many, many more.
Yeah, well, maybe I should go and do some homework and...
Maybe we should start a band.
What, the three of us?
Start a band.
Really?
Andrew and the Ponies.
Andrew and the Ponies. Jonathan, I can't play an instrument.
You write?
Yes.
You've written operas?
No, musicals.
Musicals?
So I write lyrics.
Okay, but you write the music?
No. So there we go. But you write the music.
Yeah, I write the music.
So I'll write the lyrics.
Okay.
You write the music.
Cressida can dance.
And you do the interpretative dance.
How terrifying. Is there a tambourine available?
I'm sure there is. We can find one for you.
You're bezzing your way out of this one.
OK, have some more Prosecco, Jonathan. OK, next up on Free Speech Nation. Rishi Sunak switches politics for acting, a little boy causes a stir at a pantomime, and apparently we all visualise the months of the year differently. Well, according to TikTok anyway. It's nearly time for Social Sensations. Do not go anywhere.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to this New Year's Eve special of Free Speech Nation. I hope you're having a wonderful time. It's time for Social Sensations. That's the part of the show where we look at what's been going viral this week on social media. So, first up, this video, you must have seen it. This is Rishi Sunak, who switched politics for acting in his Christmas video from Number 10.
Am I the only one here?
Number 10 press office. Harry, you've got the wrong number.
OK, so there we are. Cressida, your reaction? Because you haven't seen that before, have you?
I hadn't seen that before. I think I might need some more Prosecco.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the leader of our country.
Do you think it's embarrassing for the politicians to try and be amusing, or is he just having a bit of fun?
Well, we know one politician that does it very well.
Yes.
Mr. Farage, he's good-natured, isn't he? And not afraid to have a bit of a laugh. But I don't know, it suits some people and not others, doesn't it?
Boris Johnson can make people laugh.
Boris with the flags
Donald
coming
Trump?
down the zip wire. Yeah,
That wasn't on purpose, though.
Well, no, but it didn't promote the same feeling of awkwardness as that.
It does feel a bit awkward to me, but on the other hand, I don't mind people having a bit of a laugh.
He's having a good time. He's like, I'm a person too, you're not, but yeah.
But it's based on Home Alone, isn't
Yes,
it? That's
exactly,
the reference there, in case people didn't get it.
Sure. You could have had, I don't know, like Jeremy Corbyn sneaking through the window as a burglar.
That would be fun, and a sledgehammer hits him in the head, which is in Home Alone, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So I'm not just being really gratuitously violent there. That is actually a reference
I tried to think of Keir Starmer, but I can't remember his name. I'm a political commentator.
That's and that is a really bad sign for his tenure as Prime Minister.
I'm hammered. Yeah.
No, look, it's just it's him. He is really bland, you know.
Right.
God, imagine if he's doing that next year.
Oh, you can't expect even drunks to remember his name. Sorry, Jonathan. OK, let's move on to this video. This is one mum thought she'd treat her kid to the pantomime this year just for him to show her up. Let's have a look.
Have you ever told a lie?
My mum has.
Maybe a white lie. Okay. Have you ever used any bad words like bar or humbug?
GG for sake.
Don't worry, Becky.
OK, that was very offensive. What do you make of that,
There's
Chris?
nothing funnier than children swearing. That's brilliant.
It's a sign of bad parenting, surely.
Terrible parenting.
Yeah.
I don't know. Every now and again you hear these statistics that people that swear on average are more intelligent. Have I made that up?
I think you probably have to justify your own poor behaviour, to be honest. Jonathan, what do you think? I imagine you being quite a precocious child.
I was. My parents took me on like a little boat trip in some caves in Sweden or Switzerland or one of those made-up countries.
Yeah.
And I was singing nursery rhymes at the top of my lungs. I like the echo, and my mum pretended that I wasn't her child and gave another lady to give me chocolate buttons.
I think that is absolutely reasonable. I don't know how people cope with having children.
Yeah.
Because they are embarrassed. They're a constant source of embarrassment.
I think you can blame them for a lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, who wet the bed? Not me.
Well, yeah, and a dog's never told on you and used bad language.
No, but that's the other thing. Children are a bit too honest.
Yes.
There's a real problem with that.
We could all be more honest. That's the meaning of New Year.
I think you need more of a filter. If I'm absolutely honest, I think your honesty is the issue. OK, finally, so a woman has gone viral on TikTok for saying that everyone sees the months of the year differently in their mind.
I have a question. How do you see the months of the year? Like, in your brain, when you think of our calendar, how do you see it? Because I see it January, February, March, April, May, June. Like, I see it from top to bottom. So we're in February. We're at the top of the year. Does that make sense? I asked my mom, and my mom said she sees it January to December. She sees it side to side.
Why does this sort of stuff go viral? I mean, that is so banal.
The end of days.
You know what? The end of days. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. But I do like some viral videos. I think that's fascinating or outlandish or whatever. That's just banal.
Not very exciting. Although
No.
I have to say, I do see them in a list as well.
Do you?
Going top to bottom.
Yeah.
I don't think I do, yeah.
I don't see them as either, you know?
Don't you?
If you tell me to envisage them as a list, I'll see them as a list. If you tell me to see them consecutively...
No, I've always seen it, and then you back up to January.
Really?
Yeah.
OK. Well, but you see, this isn't like... Do you remember there was that viral clip of that image of a dress, and some people thought it was white and gold, and some people thought it was blue and black. And, you know, one group... I mean, I think the people who were saying blue and black were just lying, weren't they? Because it was clearly white and gold. Is that right?
I remember it being important at the time.
It was important at the time.
What a simpler time it was.
Yeah, that
was the biggest thing. Oh, God, bring back those days.
Yeah, what makes things viral? Who knows? Anyway, listen,
Chinese.
We do have time, I think, just to go for one unfiltered dilemma. This came in from Chloe. Chloe said, I've been speaking to two guys. They're both going to be at the same New Year's Eve party as me tonight. Who do I kiss at midnight? How about both?
Exactly.
Let's just, well, why not?
I don't know the logistics. Yeah.
At the same time.
Or, I mean,
let's bring back free love.
That's tricky, isn't it? She's going to have to invent some criteria to monitor them throughout the evening. And also, this is assuming they're both interested. I love the confidence. I think it's fantastic.
Oh, do you think, Jonathan, that we shouldn't be encouraging sexual promiscuity just because it's New Year's Eve and we need to take a hard line on this? Because I know you're going to try and kiss me at midnight.
Everyone in the office is going to get together and...
well, I'm not having it.
I don't want your super-duper whatever it was.
Super-duper gonorrhea.
Yeah, exactly. Don't want any of that. Who should she kiss? Very quickly.
She should, both of them, and become airtight.
OK, I don't know what that means, but thank you for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when USA Boxing allows transgender women to fight against female boxers, and Venice capped the number of tourists that are allowed to visit. Thanks so much to my panel, Cressida and Jonathan. By the way, they should both be back later on because I am hosting a show all night, right up until the fireworks and beyond. So do stick around this evening. And by the way, if you want to join us live and be part of our wonderful studio audience for Free Speech Nation, it's every Sunday night here in London. You can go to www.sroaudiences.com. Apply there, come along. We've got drinks, we've got vol-au-vents, we've got snacks, all sorts of things, and of course you have the pleasure of our company. Stay tuned for that show, GB News Live, New Year's Eve Live, that's next. Don't forget as well that Headliners is usually on, that's on every night at 11 o'clock. That is the late night paper preview show where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. So thank you for watching Free Speech Nation, and I'll see you in a little while.
Happy New Year.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, as we go into a brand new year, for most of us on New Year's Day, we will see some sunshine, but unfortunately there is more rain to come. So as we end 2023, we've still got this area low pressure hanging around. Note the tightly packed isobars, especially in the south, indicating a blustery end to the year. Warnings are in force throughout the rest of today. Generally, a mixture of clear spells and scattered showers. The showers could potentially be quite heavy, especially across northwestern England. I think for the bells themselves, generally central belt of Scotland, probably best to see the driest of the weather. Overnight, in the clear skies, it will turn quite chilly with a touch of frost across the north. So first thing on New Year's Day, we will see some sunshine across the south, but that will be gradually replaced by some cloud and eventually some outbreaks of rain. So I think come the afternoon, the best of the sunshine will be northern England northwards. There will be a few showers around, especially for the northern Isles of Scotland. And temperatures tomorrow generally ranging between 5 to 7 in the north, potentially up to 11 degrees across the south. And then on to Tuesday, a wet day for a lot of the UK, a band of rain, potentially some hill snow for Scotland, and then some very wet weather for southern areas of the UK. Could also turn quite windy too. Temperatures on the face of it in the